here we are at the end of part 1 and just about to launch into part 2. And you're probably wondering why you decided to take this course online in the summer session. But don't be intimidated. Most of you are doing really well and most of you are keeping up with the work. I have written individually to those 1 or 2 of you who are missing a couple of assignments. So hopefully we'll have everyone back on board at least by the end of Thursday. I have a couple of quick reminders before I make some more general comments. Firstly, the exam. You should all have been emailed a copy of the midterm exam, and it's also available to, if you want to cut and paste it, from the Campus Guide site as well. It's about 50, 60, I can't remember how many I put on there now, multiple choice, fill in the blank questions, and it relates to the chapters as you go through them. It is really key, I think, to be filling this in as you go along. If you leave it till June 16th, when the midterm is due, you're going to have a lot of work to do. But if you sort of fill it in as you're reading, I think it's going to be much easier. If you haven't been doing that, then you need to go back and do part 1 now, or it's going to be really, really tough to try and get everything done on June 16th. So that's reminder number 1. Reminder number 2, make sure you watch the PowerPoint lectures that are on the SkyDrive, which is on the left-hand side of the campus guides in the first column. The lectures aren't very long, they're about 15-20 minutes or so, but they will give you a good background to the history and explain to you what you're supposed to be getting from the readings. So if you haven't been doing those, make sure that you do, and I think it will increase your understanding of what's going on a bit better. And lastly, for those of you who have not picked up on this fact already, all the readings I have made into a podcast for you, so you can download them on as an MP3 onto your audio device and listen to them if you are pushed for time or have a long commute or something like that. It's not the full book, that would be illegal, so it's not the whole thing that introduces the chapters and introduces each reading that you're going to have to read in the book. But if you maybe aren't getting the readings first time through and you have to sit on a train for an hour, it might be a good use of your time. Okay, so the end of part 1. In part 1, we've looked at the surge of Europe, why it was Europe at this point in time that went out and explored and started to colonize in other places, namely in the Americas. European colonization elsewhere at this point in time was very limited. It was limited to mainly coastal ports and forts around the coast of Africa and into the Indian Ocean. So we looked at many different ideas from historians, and usually 2 sides of every debate: environment, culture, religion, politics, economics, military superiority. And all in all, we saw that there was bits and pieces, I think, in all of these that went towards some sort of combination force that caused Europe to surge rather than one unique thing. I think that seemed to be the consensus view, and I'm sorry if I'm not taking everybody's individual point of view into account there. But I think the big thing you're probably coming to terms with is that you're being exposed to real history here. This is not high school history. For some of you it might have been if you went to great high schools, but this isn't about names and dates and memorizing versions of events and then repeating them back. It's really key is interpreting events, interpreting the past, becoming part of a discourse, becoming part of a conversation about what happened in the past and why. About questioning our traditionally accepted versions of events, about arguing and theorizing new reasons why things might have happened and finding new patterns, particularly in global history. So on the first day of class, if you can remember back that far, we looked at wikiality. And this is an agreed upon version of reality. And some of you found that quite funny. But history done well does exactly the opposite. It questions that reality, that agreed upon story that we all know about the past, that we can read in Wikipedia. And it breaks apart what Getz calls in the beginning of part 2, the master narrative. And I talk about this quite a lot in my lectures as well, which is why it's important to make sure you watch them. So the master narrative is one grand, all-encompassing tale that includes all of human history, and we can begin it in one place and end it in the other. And so following on from great postmodern historians like Jean-François Lyotard, we're starting to break apart this master narrative, and we're starting to include the experiences of women, of the poor, of minorities, of different religious points of view. We're starting to look at things from a global perspective rather than just the perspective of the winners. And so this is something we're going to be thinking about as we go into part 2. And hopefully you find this kind of history a little bit more exciting than the sort of memorize it and regurgitate it style of history. So in part 2, we're going to be looking at revolutions, all kinds of revolutions. Those of you who are American are going to be way more familiar with one of these revolutions than any other, and that's the American Revolution. But and it can be quite challenging to see this revolution in terms of global history, to put it into context with a whole slew of other revolutions that are happening in the transatlantic world at this time. The Glorious Revolution in England, which the Parliament comes in and replaces one monarch with another monarch that they prefer. This is revolutionary, even though nobody shed a drop of blood. Of course, the American Revolution, but then the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, the slave revolt that worked and they got their own country. And the South American revolutions, as these new empires, the Spanish Empire and the Portuguese Empire we were looking at in the first part of this course, they break away from their mother countries, and they do so because of events in France, because Napoleon becomes the Emperor of France after their revolution has failed in France, and then puts his own brother on the throne of Spain and Portugal. And so the Portuguese and Spanish in the New World say, well, why should we stay loyal to the crown of Spain when it's not even Spanish anymore? So all these things are very interconnected. And we'll also be looking at a very important cultural revolution. And this is the rise of the bourgeois. And bourgeois just means middle class. But it means rich people, not like middle class is taken in America, which just means everybody. Bourgeois were the factory owners, the lawyers, and the doctors. Okay, so that's the class that we're thinking about. And they're really on the rise in this period. And not just necessarily in Europe, but it's the bourgeois that start to really question the old order of things, and very much they can be seen to be behind some of these revolutions. And maybe this is just not just a transatlantic thing, because we also see reforms in this period in Ottoman Turkey and also in Japan as well. Okay. Another key factor we're going to be looking at is the Industrial Revolution. And we'll look at it in a way that you've probably never looked at it before, and that's its connection to the slave trade. We're going to be asking the questions, is the money that came out of the slave colonies, particularly in the Caribbean, is it that's funding the Industrial Revolution? So a couple of key questions for this point of the course. How central is global trade to all of these revolutions? Is that the thing that we can say, aha, that's what's behind these? And to what degree are we starting to see a very lopsided world develop, where the West is very rich and Africa and Asia start to become poorer? And I'm looking at my notes. Oh, it's also very important not to forget the local factors. All of these people that fought in revolutionary wars or for revolutionary causes did so because they believed in their local cause, their local factors, their local war. They didn't realize they were part of a bigger global trend that stretches 100 years and across the Atlantic Ocean. So it's always important not to forget the individual in this when we're trying to put together these bigger trends, and think about local factors as well as global factors. Okay, that's it. I think I'm going to get in under 10 minutes so you'll be able to see this time. And I hope you're enjoying the course so far, and please let me know if there's anything I can do.